Come on, customizing the Photoshop user interface doesn't have to be boring. We're going to talk about it in this video. I guess for the most part it is kind of boring, but a well thought out or just customized to fit you user interface in Photoshop will just make it that much more fun and easy and just like mentally great to work in Photoshop, to just tweak and adjust and get your workspace exactly the way that you like it, and all of that good stuff. I'm Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com, and today we're going to talk about 10 different tips and tricks and just, I guess, techniques really to work and customize Photoshop to work for you. Set up Photoshop so it works for you. Let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop and check it all out. So here we are in Photoshop, and when you open Photoshop, I have a few images here open as well. When you open Photoshop, you're greeted by the, relatively gray interface, lots and lots of buttons, menus, toolbars, all this stuff over here. So the first thing is going to just be dragging and resizing and working with the direct interface as you see it. If you want to move around any of these panels that you see open, you can simply click and drag the tab. You can move tabs around. I can take like the color here, and you can see I get that blue outline around this sort of module. I can drop my color into there. I say, yeah, you know what? Actually, I want my color up here with the swatches. That makes sense. And in fact, I want my color to be the tabbed order to be, the color to the left, swatches to the right. Right. So you can drag any of these bits around. Now you can also click and hover between any of these panels, and you'll get like an arrow. So you could say, you know what? I just want a nice little small color panel. My adjustments here, I can double click on that, and that'll just collapse the panel temporarily. That's great. And by default, then the layers panel is taking up the majority of the space here, which works for me. Now, if I want to make the layers panel a little wider, again, I can hover right there just over the sort of the border or the edge of that panel, and I can just drag it out. I can drag it in. I could collapse the whole lot by clicking this little arrow. You can see collapse to icons, boom. And sure enough, it collapses it to icons. In this case, I save a lot of screen real estate, and if I need to access my layers panel, just simply click on it. Here my layers are. I can click on it again, and it collapses, hides it away. And I can do the same here with this entire doc. Now, if like, let's say I don't want this libraries doc, I can click on that whole bit. I can move it out here, right? And here with libraries, I just don't want it. So I can click here on this little flyout menu, and I can choose here close tab group. You can see I got rid of that. And now I can take this whole cluster of tabs, and if I hover over here near the edge of my screen, see I get this big blue like hovering thing. I click that, and it's going to dock my my panels, and there we go. I have all these panels. I can stretch it out, move them, and it's just clicking and dragging and moving around. These icons here, you can click and move them up, move them down, shift them around however you like. You could expand this entire docked area as well if you like. I'm going to collapse that to icons, and you can just really, using this technique, you can really play with all of the panels you have open. And by the way, most of your panels here are listed under window. You can click to open or close any panel right in here. You can really customize and build out a nice workspace for yourself just by dragging and resizing and readjusting, just as I showed you. Now, secondly, let's take a look at customizing the toolbar. So toolbar is this guy right over here. We've got all our tools listed. First and foremost, we have an arrow here, which is going to give us the double wide toolbar, which is sort of the way it always used to be in Photoshop until they realized, we're wasting a lot of screen space down here. What if we make it a single wide toolbar? Now, the only reason to go double wide toolbar is, well, just if you straight up prefer it, which some people do, or if you just have a smaller screen and your screen is not really going to let you see all of the goodness down here, like quick mask mode and some of the viewing options that we have down here at the bottom of the toolbar. It's really completely up to you. I tend to prefer to work with the single wide toolbar. Hey, I just want to jump out, take a quick breather, and let you guys know if you're looking to support the channel, you like what you see here, you want to see more tutorials, well, consider supporting the channel by picking up a copy of my Photoshop course. It's all about how to retouch images. I'm pointing up there because there's a little circle with an eye in it. You can click on that, and it'll take you over to the website where you can buy the course, or there's a link to pick up a copy of the course down in the bio, the description of this video. This channel is funded entirely by the good people, the good viewers just like you. So if you pick up a copy, thank you so much. But if not, hey, let's get back to this video. Now, in addition to customizing the way that the toolbar looks, you can also click on this. You're going to have a triple dot, not a banana. You can hold down and just click Edit Toolbar, and you can choose to either add or remove tools. So if I don't like any of these tools, like maybe I'm not using the artboard tool, I just drag it over here. Maybe I'm not using single row or single column marquee. I do that, and I can just hit Done. And you can see here under Marquee now, I just have rectangular and elliptical marquee tools and not those single or row or column. You can see all of those unused tools, if you will, they all get moved down here underneath your triple dots. I'm going to just click on that to edit the toolbar, and I'm going to drag these guys back into place here, put them where they go in my original toolbar, just the way I like it. And by the way, if you want the banana to appear, hold down Shift when you hit this Done button here, and you will have the banana in your Photoshop UI as well. Just a little hidden trick here in Photoshop. Now, moving along to point number 3, in addition to editing the toolbar, you can also edit or customize the menus. So up here under Edit, we have a Menus option. So I can select that and bring it up, and you can see here we can open up any one of the menus, File, and we can change the visibility. So like here, I'm not using Browse and Bridge, so that's hidden. Maybe if I'm not using Open as a Smart Object, I could hide that. I could hide Close and Go to Bridge. I could hide Check In if I'm not using Photoshop in that capacity. I don't need to worry about checking in over a server. I'm never using Revert, so maybe I could just get rid of that. All kinds of different things. If the menus are just overwhelming and you want to start hiding things, you can do that. You can also set colors. So if you're maybe doing a walkthrough with somebody and you say, hey, stick to all of the red commands in Photoshop, you could come into Photoshop and color code a bunch of stuff and save it. We'll talk about saving workspaces later, but you can save all of the different colors and menus and hotkeys and everything you would customize in Photoshop. So if you're handing Photoshop over to somebody else, or you're sharing a computer and you have a colleague that you're working with, you can set up Photoshop for you and set up Photoshop for them, save the workspaces, and you can very easily go and change things up. And now here you can see we have our updated menu. I could go Edit, I could go Menus, and I could just revert and turn everything back on that there was turned on initially, even if I'm not using it in this case. And by the way, you can save your menus right here in Keyboard Shortcuts and Menus dialog box here, or create a new what's called set based on the current set of menus. So you can see we've got Photoshop defaults, and your new set here would be added to that list. And I should also mention over here, you can also tweak the panel menus as well. So each little panel, those little flyout menus that we were talking about before, you can change like the 3D panel and all of the stuff that's over there, and so on and so forth under the info panel, the layers panel here. So you've got all these different things that you can choose to show or hide certain things. And again, you really probably wouldn't be doing that unless maybe you're handing over Photoshop to somebody and you really want to dumb the program down and keep somebody from feeling overwhelmed or something like that. If you want to take the time to go in and clean things up, dumb things down, or simplify things, you can always do that. Better to have the option maybe than not, because somebody's going to find a use for it. So you can customize your menus, and that can be super duper helpful here in Photoshop. Now, one of the things that I really love, moving on to number 4, up here under Preferences, Photoshop Preferences, or if you're working on a Windows machine, it'll be Edit, and your preferences will be down here around the bottom. Photoshop Preferences, we can choose Interface, and we have some options here in terms of like an overall color theme. Now, when I'm working in Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom, I tend to like to keep the UI very dark. I just associate working in a darker environment with like that dark room, working on photos, working on pixel-based images. When I'm working, if I'm using, I don't really use InDesign much, but certainly if I'm over in Adobe Illustrator, I prefer the lighter interface. That just like subconsciously in my mind, I have that attached to like creating graphics, vector artwork, illustration, that kind of work. So for me, it's a purely just subliminal, subconscious thing. It gets me in the right frame of mind. I like to work with a dark user interface, and you also have all this different stuff here, which the standard screen mode, by the way, this is this bit of junk surrounding the image. So if I go light gray, you'll see out there around the image it's light gray. You could choose a custom, and that'll just, well, right now our custom color is pink, but if you want to change that, you could choose select custom color and make it bright blue or whatever, some ridiculous color. I'm going to hit OK, and if you don't like the bright blue, let me just zoom out. You can right click anywhere out here, and you see that menu is brought up again. So I can say, go back to dark gray, and we're right back to dark gray. I'm going to zoom in here on my photo once more. So changing the color and overall brightness of Photoshop's UI, it's just a nice thing to be able to do, and I find that it's something that I really, really enjoy. Another abrupt interruption here. If you're enjoying what you see and you want to check out all the Photoshop tutorials, all the Lightroom tutorials, etc., etc., etc. on the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel using that button there in the YouTube interface that allows you to subscribe to this channel. Go ahead, do it. It's right there. I'll wait for you. And there you go. Let's get back to this tutorial. So now getting back to customizing some stuff and moving on to the 5th step in this tutorial, you can also customize your keyboard shortcuts. So under Edit, we have keyboard shortcuts. And I honestly, because I do a lot of tutorials, I don't really like to change my keyboard shortcuts all that much. I might have added 1 or 2 keyboard shortcuts here or there. But if I don't like V for the move tool, I could set it to Command Shift Option V or Control Shift Alt V, but you can see here it's saying this is an invalid shortcut because I can only use a single letter for a tool shortcut. So if I'll just stick with V for something like that, that's fine. Now you can see how the artboard also has the letter V. That's kind of interesting because what that means is by hitting the letter V multiple times, we can swap between these tools. So that's really nice to know. We'll get back to talking about that in a moment. But before we talk about that, not only can you change the keyboard shortcuts for tools, you can also change it for application and panel menus. So under panel, or I'm sorry, let's go application menus. These are like, Photoshop and file. File, let's say create new. It's just Command or Control N. If I don't like that, I can just, say, look, I want Command Shift Option or Control Shift Alt and the letter N. But it's saying, look, the Option key is already in use for another command. If you accept this, we're going to remove it from the command that it's currently associated with. We're going to just hit the Escape key. We don't want to mess around with that. We're going to leave it as Command or Control N for new. But the point is you can go in and really tweak and change and adjust all of your keyboard shortcuts. And by the way, you can save, create new sets like we could before with the menus. But also, when we talk about creating and saving workspaces, we're going to be able to just save our keyboard shortcuts right along with our saved workspaces as well. So same thing with panel menus, any keyboard shortcuts that are associated with these, or if we want to set up a new keyboard shortcut. If we want a keyboard shortcut for a new brush preset, we can do that. So it's really pretty cool what you can go in and do here in terms of setting up keyboard shortcuts. And it's just nice to be able to go in and really customize all of your keyboard shortcuts here in Adobe Photoshop. So I'm just going to hit OK, and I'm not really going to mess around or change anything in my version of Photoshop. Now let's talk about real deal changing stuff here in the Layers panel. The Layers panel is going to be something you're going to use a lot if you're working in Photoshop. So it's nice to be able to know you can change things in the Layers panel. If you come up here and hit the flyout menu for the Layers panel, you can come down here to Panel Options, and you can change the size of the thumbnail. So maybe right now you're working with a tiny thumbnail, and it's just annoying because it's a little difficult to see what's on the layer. Well, you can change that. Just come up here to your Panel Options and go ahead and make it huge. You can change the way that the thumbnail is shaped. Do you want it to be shaped to show the entire document or just the layer bounds? Let me show you what this means. I'm going to set it to layer bounds real quick, and you can see it doesn't look like anything's changed. Let's create a new layer though, and what we'll do is we will create a shape on this layer. So we'll just create like a rounded rectangle, something like that. You can see the thumbnail is now just the size of the rounded rectangle. It's not showing the full layer. Whereas if I come back here to my panel options and I set it to show the entire document and hit OK, you're going to see it's going to show that rounded rectangle in the context of the entire Photoshop document. So you have some options, again, depending on how you want to view this whole thing. And there's also some cool stuff here. Use default masks on fill layers, expand new effects, and add copy to copied layers and groups. That's more function of the layers panel and not really the display of the layers panel. Well, maybe expand new effects is, but it's going to be hard to explain that without basically creating something here in Photoshop to show you what all that means. You, by the way, can also just right-click on any open space here on the layers panel and change the size of the thumbnail this way as well. So that's cool to know that you have that option. I can drag my layers panel back, drop it in its place there. Well, let me try dropping it in its place again. I think I just need to resize it here because I'm moving it off my screen. There we go. We drop it in place, and I'll just drag it over to the left of channels and paths, and order has been restored. Now, another really cool thing about Photoshop is, let's say we've spent a long time retouching this photo and it's just the way we want it to be, and we just want to look at it without all the distractions. Well, you can hit the Tab key, and that's going to make all your panels go away. And let's say we're looking at it and we realize, you know what, we missed this little spot on her neck. You can hit the Tab key to bring everything back, or you could hit Shift Tab and just bring the layers dock, or the dock holding the layers panel back. So you can check out your layers panel, maybe adjust some things, and then hit Tab again. Well, hit Tab twice to make it go away. Shift Tab would just make that go away again. If you move your mouse to the edge of the screen and hold it there, you're going to have the menu or the set of panels along that side of the screen just reappear, and then when you move away from it, it'll disappear automatically again. So it's just nice to know you have that little bit of option. I'm going to hit Tab to bring all of my panels back. Now you also have these viewing modes. Down here in the bottom of the toolbar, if I click on this, you can see it switches us to like this solid workspace. If I click it again, it's going to take me to full screen, and look at this. Photoshop's going to say, hey, look, in full screen, the panels are hidden. So the only way you're going to be able to get out of this, while in full screen mode, you can return to standard screen mode by pressing F or hitting Escape. I'm going to say, go ahead to full screen, and you can see everything goes away. It's just black, and my artwork or my photo right in the middle of the screen. I can hit the letter F. It's going to bring me back to the normal viewing mode. Now, that's something to consider. Now, if we just hit the letter F once, we go to one viewing mode. If we hit the letter F again, we go to full screen viewing mode and hit the letter F, and we come back. So you don't even really need to click any of these icons down at the bottom of the toolbar, you can just use, as you can see here, the hotkey F, and you can cycle through standard, full screen mode with menu bar, and straight, real deal, full screen mode. I'm going to hit cancel there because I don't need to go back and show you full screen mode again. But that's the 7th thing that I want to show you. Now, the 8th is more of like a little trick. When we were talking about the hotkeys, remember the hotkey or keyboard shortcuts here, when we're talking about tools, we have like the letter V assigned to both tools here, the move tool and the artboard tool. Well, under preferences, you have some options here. I'm going to try to open this up proper here. We're going to go to General, and I'm going to move down here to Tools, and we have this option right here, use Shift key for tool switch. What does that mean? Well, if I hit, let's say I just grab my brush tool and I hit the letter V. Well, you can see, there we go. We selected the move tool. If I hit the letter V again, I don't get my artboard tool. I have to hold down Shift and hit V. And it's not taking me over to the artboard tool. I promise you it works though. Let's go to our marquee tool. The hotkey for that is M, and I hit Shift M. You can see it switches to the elliptical marquee tool from the rectangular marquee tool. Hold down Shift and hit M again, and it goes back to rectangular. If you don't want to have to hold Shift and you want to be able to quickly cycle through, just uncheck that. You can see here I can hit the letter M, boom, 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 boom. If I hit the letter J, it's going to take me down to the healing brush, and then J is going to cycle through all these different tools here located underneath the spot healing brush. So that's pretty cool. We can quickly cycle through. It all just depends on how you work. For the most part, I keep Shift and the hotkey on, but there's certainly nothing wrong with shutting it off. It's actually a little bit faster to work that way. Now, one other quick thing. Any tool that has this little arrow located next to it in the toolbar, that means you can click and hold on the tool to bring out a menu that contains all of the tools located kind of beneath that tool. But clicking and holding is a little annoying. You can simply just right-click on the tool, and it just pops the menu out, and it's so much faster. It's the way that I work. It takes a second to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's so fast. You just right-click a tool, and you access any of the shape tools underneath it. Bam, you draw the shape out. You don't have to wait that second for Photoshop to open that little menu for you. Now, one other thing, and this is number 9, we're going to talk about arranging our windows. So here under Window, we have this Arrange option where if you have multiple files open, we could say like, hey, look, I want to compare all 4 of my open images side by side, right? That's pretty cool. I can select my zoom tool here, choose to zoom all windows, and then say, look, fit to screen, or maybe we'll go fill screen. And there we zoom our one image, but I'm going to select the zoom out. I'm going to click, and we'll zoom all of our images out. And you can see, you can just go through and look over multiple images at the same time. I'll shut off zoom all windows, and I'll select this up here, and I'll just, I'll choose to zoom in again, and I'll just zoom this image in a little bit. So you can quickly, check out all your photos or your images or whatever. You can click and drag one of the images around, take that image there, and you can see how behind the scenes here, this photo now takes up and has kind of automatically moved into place, taking up half the screen over there, whereas these 2 photos are kind of splitting room over here. And if we don't want this to float anymore, we can go Window Arrange, say, yeah, let's put it back to 4 up. Everything is back in order. We can use some of the options here under Arrange like Match All. You can see it's going to kind of zoom them all to that same 27.78%. So they're all zoomed to the same. We go Match Zoom. Well, it's kind of what we have now is Match Zoom. You can also match location and match rotation, but none of that is changed here because we just hit Match All, so we can't really work with that. You can also go ahead. Let's go back to Arrange. We can consolidate these all into tabs, but before we do that, I'm going to choose Float All in Windows. And you can see now all the images are kind of out. This is the way things used to be back in like the older versions of Photoshop. But then a number of versions of Photoshop ago, they introduced the tabbed windows. So we can just consolidate all to tabs, and then all of our images are back in tabs. And you can quickly navigate your tabs using Control and the Tab key. You can zip through your tabs, and you can see my tabs are all out of order. Don't worry about that. And then Control-Shift-Tab moves you backward through your tabs. So you can move forward or backward through your stack of images, if you will. It's just a really cool way. You can very quickly go into Photoshop and say, look, 3 up stack, 4 up, 6 up. I can do a side-by-side horizontal or vertical comparison if I'm looking to do something like that. Maybe I can take the monsters image, drag it down here. So really anything you want to do, click and drag and push and pull things around. You can see I can take like the bottom of this image here. If I can get my mouse to really hover over it, you can just take it and just, basically you can scroll it up or down is what I'm trying to show you, but it's not cooperating with me right here, right now. I'll go Window, Arrange, consolidate all these back into tabs, and let's Command or Control 0 to just zoom this back and fill our open area of the screen with this. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about saving a workspace. So you can save a workspace up here in the top right corner. We have this little drop-down menu, and these are all of our workspaces. Now, Essentials is kind of like the standard Photoshop workspace, but we've gone and let's say we've really mucked things up here, and let's close this tab group. And let's close the whole Let's close the whole kit and caboodle here. I'm just going to close that. And whoops, we actually didn't want to do all of that. Well, the problem is there's not an undo button. You can't go file or edit undo and bring all your panels back. What you can do is go up here to your workspaces and choose to reset the current workspace, which in this case, we're in the Essentials workspace. So let's say, yep, reset the Essentials workspace. And there we go. Everything is reset to the saved position. Now, I have this TutVid version saved, which is my preferred way of working in Photoshop. And you'll see, there we go. This is the way I normally work in Photoshop. When I open it and I use it, this is everything I normally use. And, you know, some panels that I use a lot, but not enough to keep open all the time, like the character panel. I can just click on the icon, pop it out, use it, close it up, and I'm back in business. Now, if you want to save your own workspace, you can do that by just choosing New Workspace. So you can go New Workspace, save it whatever you want, and then down here is where, notice, you can choose to save keyboard shortcuts, custom menus, and a custom toolbar. So this is what's great. You could say like, hey, this is Beth's workspace. I've got my keyboard shortcuts, my menus, my toolbar, and then, you know, Jack also uses this computer. So you could save a second workspace. That would be Jack's workspace. And we could say, yeah, we're going to save all that good stuff. Go ahead, save it. And then you can see up here, there would be Jack's workspace. And then, of course, if we'd saved Beth's would be there as well. Now, let's say Jack gets fired. He's on his way. I could select Jack's workspace. Jack, we're done with you. We're going to delete your workspace, my man. Delete workspace. But we can't because Jack's is the active workspace. So here's what we do. We cancel. And, of course, you simply choose a different workspace. And then we would go and say delete workspace. Jack, we canned you, buddy. You're gone. Delete. Do you really want to delete the workspace? Yes, I do. Jack, sadly, is no longer with us. But you can see Photoshop has, you know, like a 3D workspace, which is going to, you know, the tools and the panels that you primarily are going to use when you're working with 3D and motion graphics, graphics and web, painting, photography, you name it. You can really do a ton of customization in terms of the UI, the interface, the everything to do with the way Photoshop looks to you and works for you. You know, just customize Photoshop for you. So that'll pretty well wrap it up. I told you it's kind of boring stuff, but there's so much in there, and I realized I've never done a tutorial on the interface in Photoshop and really customizing Photoshop for you. I just went through and talked about the stuff that I normally use, and I enjoy this by no means as like a classroom in a book, because that would be taking something that's kind of boring and making it even more boring. But if you've stuck around this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do genuinely appreciate that. And for the Photoshop user interface and custom keyboard shortcuts and menus and the little banana tool and moving panels around in saved workspaces and hiring Jack and then subsequently firing Jack. For this tutorial, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.